What's up? It's Austin Jordan here with season 1, episode 2 of the Bryant's History, One Buzz, One Canvas. We'll be discussing the rise and change of Bryant, Arkansas. This is the era between 1931 and 1960. So, last topic, I'll just give you a quick rundown of what we did discuss in episode 1. We discussed the township was formed in 1878 and how it became an official town in 1892. The Gilded Age passed, which helped make the population bigger and went from industry from agriculture. The school was built around 1916, and the 5 buildings were burnt down in 1952. I found the official date, 1952. But I want to go back a little bit ways to 1931, because as I said in episode 1, there was actually a person who was born around this time, and he became one of the biggest figures in Bryant's history. Who I'm referencing here goes by the name, and you've probably heard this name if you're from Bryant. His name is Edward Love. And Edward Love was one of the most iconic, more known people in Bryant for his amazing years of service. I want to cover most of his information today. So, here, we're going to start this off pretty simple. Edward Love was born February 27th, 1930. He was actually born in Franklin, Arkansas. So he started his life with his parents, of obviously as any other child. I don't think he's an only child. But Edward Love had a pretty amazing life. There's some things I didn't even know before I started writing this. So he grew up in around 1950. Edward Love was actually in the Army. Yeah, he was in the Army, and he fought with the Korean War in the Army force from 1950 through 1953. All 3 years of the Bloody War, he was on the front lines in the Army. Which, surprisingly, now he can put on his name that he was actually a veteran. But about 3 years later, he started being a social studies teacher at Bryant High School. And this is the first reference of Edward Love actually being in Bryant. He taught social studies and history. And this was between the years of 1955 through 1963. Okay, and after an interview with who is now the head of Edward Love Auditorium in Bryant, Arkansas, named Jeremy Clay, he gave some information about kind of a little bit about who Edward Love was, and this is what he quoted. Play the clip.
Edward Love was a superintendent that had a big heart for the arts, and after his retirement, that was one of the things they did, is they named the auditorium in his honor. They decided to keep that as also something that they would do. I apologize, I got a phone call.
Okay, after watching a little bit of that clip, Edward Love was someone, and this is what I got from that. He loved the arts. He loved, just in general, the idea of just cinematicness, having plays and students. He loved children, okay? He loved being able to teach children. He loved watching them grow. And that's a good thing. And he also wanted to be an educator. Whenever he went to his school, Franklin, Arkansas, he wanted to be an educator. Now, there wasn't many education-wise courses you could take because you were limited down to your Common Core classes, maybe home economics and economics. There's not much you could really do. There's not the special classes that we have today versus what they had then. And around 1963, he actually was what I would say was a massive promotion. I meant to write, I'm sorry, my date was wrong. 1969. 1969, he quit teaching social studies. As a matter of fact, became high power in Bryant. He became the superintendent of Bryant Public Schools. Now keep in mind, as time went by, after the fire in 1952, they rebuilt some of the buildings. One of them, which I will kind of build you a little bit of a map here. Campus expanded a little bit, because then you had what we call Building 1, which it still stands to this day. You had a building right here that does not stand to this day. However, there is evidence of it existing. This was Building 2, and this was the high school. This was the original high school. We're only going to focus on this part right here specifically, because that's what really matters. So, I will go ahead and show some photos. Okay, you have Building 1, which is, it's nothing special. It's now the Hornet Volleyball Gym in 2024. And Building 2 does not stand. However, if you look here on this photo I'm about to put up, you're going to see the building before it was demolished in 2016. Like 2018, this is before it was demolished. This is a 3D render from Google Earth. And then I took this photo Thursday, which is these 3 magnolia trees that you'll see still stand to this day, but there's no building around them to the courtyard. And Edward Love, he passed away. He passed exactly on April 16th, I believe. April 12th, 2016. Now, this is way out of date, so we're going to back up a little bit. The Fine Arts Center did not exist. However, the auditorium existed. The auditorium held about 800 and something students. And it was actually built in 1983, in about the 1980 era. It was named after Edward Love, which is why we call it the Love Auditorium. What you're about to witness is a little bit more information from what Mr. Clay said about this auditorium and what he said about regarding to what it was before and after there was a major expansion here in 2019 whenever it turned from Edward Love Auditorium, which was the 883 seated or something like that, 833 seated, to the 1296 seated. But not only was the auditorium expanded like that, but it also ended up having classrooms. It also ended up having some more major expansions, which made this into what we call Building 9, the Fine Arts Center. What you're about to see is an interview between me and head of fine arts stagecraft teacher Jeremy Clay, who has been teaching ever since 2015, I think. Go ahead and roll the clip. I'm here at the Edward Love Auditorium, which has been here since longer than I've been here. I'm here with Jeremy Clay. He is he's stage coordinator, head of Fine Arts Center. How's your day?
Doing pretty good.
So you've been here since Old Love. Could you maybe give some ideas on how that was?
Okay, so I started here back in 2013, and when I started then, the original Edward Love Auditorium was here. It was great for the early 80s.
I saw some photos.
But by 2013, it was definitely not great. For about 3 years, we kind of put a lot of patches on it, just to make it work for the next 3 years. Some of those things where I added a new lighting system and so that we could be digital rather than analog. And I worked on the rigging that was in there at the time. And we bought a cyclorama, which we'd never had that in there before. We used it for a few different shows. Probably my fondest memory is a production of Les Miserables, which was our, I guess that was my second year here. And we had a working turntable. We did everything that you can do on a stage that is that way. And with the millage pass, once that passed, they wanted to invest in fine arts. And so the new Fine Arts Center was one of the things that they wanted to design. And they asked for my help on that. I gave them as much information as I could. I got to plan a little bit. Two things that I asked for were a scene shop and a black box theater. And I got both those things, which I'm super excited about having here. Having been in this facility now for 4 years, I of course figured out all the things that I forgot to tell them. But I can't think of anything that has hindered me from doing the production work that I've wanted to do. It's become a venue for the community as well. I think that in the month of May, we have anywhere from 5 to 6 different dance companies that come in and do their recitals here.
Oh, yeah.
And just community events. We have junior high coming over here to do events, performances.
Choirs,
yes,
like that.
Absolutely. And we've also had some major statewide competitions that have been held here for band and for choir. I just think it's a wonderful facility. It's state of the art, and I'm very, very proud of the wonderful facility we have.
Okay, so after watching that, I did erase the board. We're going to go over the notes. We're going to summarize what we have talked about today. So, we're going to start here. 1930, Edward Love was born. Now keep in mind, The Rise and Change is the title of this. However, most of what we're learning about is this famous person's Edward Love. So, next time we're probably going to talk more about the architecture and how they refurbished the buildings. But Edward Love was our main topic today because he pretty much was what made a foundation for Bryant regarding to the fire, regarding to how education runs today versus it did a while back. Edward Love here was born in 1930. Around 1950 to 53. Not only was it the Korean War, but for shortness and because it's what it says on most of the placards, we're going to write Ed Love. Ed Love was in the Army for U.S. Okay? And then from 56 through 69, Ed was a teacher at Bryant High School, the old Bryant High School. So it's not the building 10 and the building 11, the building 12 that we have today. This was the building 2 that we used to have. This ranged between 1956 to 69. And he taught, if you remember, social studies. Alright, next factor, and this is something I need to add in that I did not talk about. Around this era right here, 1950 to 1960, between that area, there were some things that happened that were major to most schools, but also was major to the development of Bryant, which I will go ahead and put that in there, because I kind of sped through this. This was actually about the development. Okay, so in 1956, I think, let me just double check my paper. Yeah, 1956. This is a pretty common thing for public schools, especially in Little Rock. But this is when they signed a declarement to quit segregation. So this is the year that desegregation was passed. And of course, you would know Martin Luther King was the one who made the speech to declare this right. 1957. 1957 was a golden year for Bryant as well, but so is Benton, because this is when the interstate crossed through. This is now called Interstate 30. Interstate 30 is the giant highway that kind of separates Benton from Bryant. If you look at it, you can kind of see that. And from there, we're pretty good. From 1969, I'm going to shorten this for more notes. In 1969, Ed Love actually quit being a teacher, and he became, you guessed it, the superintendent at Bryant Public Schools. And he was a superintendent until his retirement, which was in 1990. Which is his retirement time. We're going to put one date between that. 1981 was when Love Auditorium was built. And then his retirement in 1990. And then the rest of that year, nothing much really happened. He became a sponsor for Bryant until he passed away. April the 12th, 2016. What you're looking at is kind of the birth line of what Bryant was. Bryant High School has been something that's lasted long. And if you were to meet, if Edward Love had not passed away in 2016, you want to have an interview with him, you'd get a lot of useful information regarding to the school itself. And because keep in mind, Ed Love was a teacher in 1956. He was in Building 2 in its golden beginning era. And then he became a superintendent in the late 60s. So he had pretty much control of, like, most of what the school did. He knew almost everything about the Bryant High School, middle school. Salem was built around this time, I believe. There was a lot of stuff that he would have given you if you were to ask him. However, we still remember the loss of Edward Love because he was one of the major people of Bryant. And if you want more information, I believe the best place to go, if it still stands, is the First Missionary Baptist Church at Bryant, Arkansas, where he was a member of the church, but they also held his funeral service there and his visitation. Edward Love, there was not many photos I could find of him, however, I will put some over here on the side of the screen. But pretty much all I wanted to cover today was information from about 30 to 90, because, and that says right here 1931 1960, because that's what I'm going to talk about the architecture of the school. And I think we're going to proceed with that. But this is some stuff about Edward Love. I'll go ahead and leave the screen. I will have it noted down. But let's move to topic number 2, the architecture. We're going down to how the school was built and how they kind of ran it. The Fine Arts Center was one of the major pieces of the school and still is to this day. So we're going to go ahead and begin our path, which I kind of foreshadowed most of what we're talking about. So we're going to kind of jump this to about where we left off, which was around 1955. So this is where we're starting off our entirety completely. As I said, the 5 original buildings were burned down. They were destroyed. The school, of course, they did not have the ability to educate students. However, they started the construction of the newer school, which the newer school was nothing special. You had your average buildings, such as Building 1, which was their main gym. And here's some photos of it now. It still stands. This was the main gym. This is where they held pep rallies. This is where they held basketball games, volleyball games. They held practices for wrestling, and they did not hold practices for football. Never mind. They also built Building 2, which was a more larger building, but this was actually the main school itself. Building 2 and Building 1 were the original buildings. Now there was another building, which there is no evidence of it standing to this day, but there was another building not too far to the side of it, which wasn't numbered, but was the middle school. And another building beside it, that was the junior high. There's no evidence of these buildings standing to this day, at all. Research it, it's not there. You'd have to talk to somebody who was a graduate in 1960, which you probably won't find one that's living. If so, they're really old or they've lost their memory. But you had this is your beginning of campus. This was like how campus began. It wasn't in this specific order. You would have had Building 1, Building 2 right beside it. You had the middle school, and you had the junior high. The rest of that was woods. There was nothing intended to be built. And all the way through then, school was changed for lots and lots of people. This is the beginning of Bryant starting major things. This is why I like to call this the Rise and Change, which is what you see the title, Rise and Change. Here's some of the things that were done. Thankfully, Bryant was not a uniform school. Okay, thankfully we don't have uniform schools in Bryant. I will say though, Bryant changed a lot. You see, if I did not mean to draw squiggly. You have your basics, okay. Around this time, another figure, which we're not going to get too much into her, she was the librarian. Her name was Mabel Boswell. Sounds familiar from Bryant, because she was, I forgot what her role was, but she was a major part of Bryant as well. But some of the major changes, of course, this is around the time they started using typewriters instead of just handwriting everything. Yeah, keep in mind that Bryant, Arkansas was one of the most high-tech schools. Even then, they always had some of the newer stuff. One of the first schools to use typewriters in Arkansas. One of the first schools to have a 2-story building in Arkansas. One of the schools to have a massive library. There was a lot about Bryant that dominated most schools around the time. And I gotta think, in World War II, the efforts, which we talked about this then, the fire happened just so happenly after World War II. So you gotta look at the I'm gonna draw you a graph here. Okay, this is a periodic line. So this is like time. Okay, we're gonna write this out like this. So we're gonna write 1940, 45, 50, 55. This is going to go really bad. 56, 57, 58, 59. Through here was the World War II efforts that we did. Of course, mining bauxite and mining coal. So the money that we had around the time was being pushed to help advance with the war. So money was it was down low. The 50s, the money was not so bad. So we were on this stagnant, which I will say right here was about the median of our cost. This is about the median where they wanted the money to be, if not higher. The school burnt down. And of course we still have money. But this is whenever they had to build these new buildings. So it downsloped pretty bad. Way below the median. Now, the school, gratefully, there was a lot of students who went to Bryant. There's a lot of people who donated to Bryant for this fund because Bryant was one of the highest schools. So, their money, this was like what I'd like to call Bryant's not really a heyday, kind of a miniature Great Depression. But the money started going back up, and then eventually hit its median around 1958. And now it has went up a little bit past the median and kind of has stayed stagnant like this. This changes past the 60s. But this is kind of how you would look at your money. Right? We did pretty good before World War II. Bryant, Arkansas sent money and sent resources, which that brought our money down. We had a lower surplus. So we started losing money, which brought us down to our median. Because, yeah, I think this median doesn't mean anything other than this right here's the cushion of money we had in case something happened. This was the money we were supposed to have. That cushion broke whenever the school burnt down. And, of course, we did recover from that. However, as time goes by, you'll see that things did indeed go pretty bad for Bryant. They still are. There's still some issues with the money that we have to this day. We're not going to get into that financially because I'm not trying to get targeted, you know? The cost went towards a lot of things. And practically as the 60s came around, new trends started coming around. So, like I said, we went from, keep in mind this was around 1960, the golden year of change, where we went from writing our stuff, that's supposed to be a pencil, you don't judge. We went from pencil and paper straight over here to the newer product of a typewriter. Okay? Having super small buildings to actually having larger two-story buildings. We also had some expansions from trends of fashion. You see, the common code for here was this. You had to wear, okay, now before the 50s, girls would wear either skirts that went to the knees or past the knees, or they would wear jeans. Same with guys. Guys would also wear jeans. You couldn't wear shorts. And because we were not a uniform school, they didn't enforce it as you're getting kicked out of Brant. Instead, we went from skirts and jeans to the 60s to where you could wear baggier clothes. But one of the biggest issues, and this is something I talked to Mackenzie about, was that there was no AC. So it would get hot in the summer, and you were not allowed to wear shorts. There's no AC. In fact, that was one of the bigger issues with schools around the open, which is why they built it around woodsy areas, so it kind of shaded, you know. You look at the campus today, there's no such thing as shade. It's all exposed. Around the 60s, you know, segregation was not really an issue for Bryant, but it was still something they passed to where racism should be kind of, it's not tolerated. Around the time, it wasn't heavily enforced, but today it is. So, they passed the laws of no racism. They also passed laws of, because schools used to be strict about religion. You were allowed to practice your religion at school. It didn't matter what your religion was. That's bad star date. I don't know how I'm drawing one of those. There we go. You could practice religion then, but now you have a freedom of your religion. That's not star date. I'm off topic. So, whenever it came to schooling, you couldn't practice your religion. Of course, there's no religious courses because they don't want to enforce that on students. Weird rule. But now today, it's not really looked at as much. But they started just giving you the thumbs up on it. So, that's still a plus. Now the 60s, of course, is whenever you had cheer teams. This is the beginning of change, because here's some of the things that you had now. You had cheer. You had school rivals, which is more of a sports thing. But then you even had, believe it or not, new classes. New class options. So now, we've kind of evolved from a smaller school into a school with more opportunities. Because some of the things that they started adding, there was 4 specific things. There's more than 4, but here's the 4 things that were pretty commonly added. You had classes regarding the cooking, which they kind of dubbed it into home ec. You had gym classes. By gym, I mean like fitness. So like, today we call it fitness, but pretty much weights, treadmills, dumbbells, like workout classes. You had tutoring kind of stuff, so you'd have your study halls. Study hall. This is whenever introduced to Bryant, not other schools. I know some schools had that before. But most crazy factor, one of the biggest things that was added, and it is still kind of so forth a big deal here, was the thing of alternate language. Spanish classes, French classes, those two classes started being added around 1960. Same with study hall, fitness, and it's called cutlery now, but cooking. So you're looking at this major expansion from Bryant itself. Okay? So let's just give a quick recap. I'm going to forget a lot of this information. This was not scripted. This was not scripted at all. So the rise and change, okay? There's new classes. Which is like languages. Languages, cooking, wellness, and study hall. So the new classes became popular and are still used here in Bryant High School. So is middle schools and junior high using them. Another really good thing is that this is whenever there was desegregation. Desegregation. There was 4 main buildings. I'm gonna write built. My head's not running on all cylinders if you can't tell. I'm gonna write this down too. But Ed Love was a teacher of, I'm gonna put SS for social studies. This is when they passed the law to be a non-uniform school. Sports became a larger deal whenever it came to the history. And then finally, there was no AC. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what you have. In a nutshell, wrapped around what we just discussed and how this evolved. So next time, I think we'll discuss more into the 70s. Because through 1960 and 1970, there was not much that happened. It was pretty much stagnant according to what we have learned. So I think we're going to kick into the roaring 70s and 80s, which I will leave that in discussion. I will say though, Bryant has changed. Because think about it like this. You just went from 5 buildings of pencil and paper to 4 larger buildings with typewriting and more class options. Today in 2024, Bryant High School has the most class options than any other school in Sling County. So, Yeah. That's your facts for the Rise and Change, which was from 1931 1960. You had that little miniature Great Depression, but at the end of the day, Bryant still evolved from that. Till next time.